Hi, today I'm going to show you how to find the Kokyu with this bokken. I think finding the Kokyu is an extremely important element in Aikido. We practice the Ken Suburi with this primary goal is to find the feeling of the Kokyu, feeling of the hips, correct placement of your footwork, hands placement correctly, bringing the elbows in, shoulders relaxed, cutting into one spot, one dot, which I'll explain very shortly. When you follow all these correctly, then naturally you will be finding another kind of power that is not shoulder, chest power or bicep power. It's more of a centered power from here with the correct placement of your hands and the Kokyu feeling. This can be found when we are practicing correctly. So whenever we do Ken Suburi, yes, there's that element I've mentioned before, the cut, but that's not the primary goal, how to cut. The primary goal is to find the Kokyu feeling with the bokken. Now in Iwama, we use a very specific bokken that is slightly heavier than other Kens that I have seen before when I used to practice Aikido. You'll find different kind of bokken, but this Iwama bokken is heavier and there's more weight or cross. So because it is heavier, it's actually intentionally heavier, so that if you use your shoulders and you keep cutting wrongly with muscles, tension, you'll find after a number of cuts it's starting to hurt you because it's too heavy. So you've got to find another way of doing it, and it's relaxing the shoulders, correct positioning of your footwork, that you start to find the Kokyu. So I'm going to show you a few things that you can work on to build your Aikido in order to help you find the Kokyu, which is extremely important, because once you found it, it changes your Aikido for good. You don't look back. You really apply Aikido more of the power, more of the Kokyu. But all of this can take place if you've got the correct placement of your footwork. So it's extremely important. If your footwork is not aligned correctly, the placement of your hips will be slightly wrong and it's not going to work as well as it should be. So the back foot should be at an angle of 45 degrees and the front foot in line with the bone of the big toe to the side. So it's there. It's not here. If it's here, you open up slightly, the foot being too much aside, your center is slightly more aligned toward your partner or whoever you're facing. Here, when you have the front foot in line, your center is pointing here and you're facing in that direction. So it's intentional. You never want to expose your center towards your opponent or your partner. And when you have a hand knee, you move your shoulders more sideways because of the front foot. If your front foot is slightly here, your shoulders are slightly more flat than they should be. Here, you see that? The alignment of your shoulders as opposed to that is a big difference. The alignment of your hips will determine the alignment of your shoulders. The hips are happening, the hips movement can only happen when your front foot is placed correctly and the back foot also. So the back foot must be at an angle of 45 degrees. If you've got it to 90 degrees, it doesn't feel right, because when you cut with a 90 degrees angle front foot, you're having too much of this placement. when it's 45 degrees, is giving you this and this. So your hip turn and down more, turn and down. And that is why placement of a fit is so crucial, because I see it as a foundation. If you want to build a strong house, you've got to look at the foundation. If you've got a strong foundation, you can build a very strong house. So I think Aikido is the same. If your footwork from down to the ground is correct, that everything else will fall into place more naturally. So placement of hips. When you do the cut, so here into Ken Regnier, when you do the cut, you don't do the cut with the shoulders. If you have tension on your shoulders, tension of the shoulders prevent the free feeling of your hips, because the tension of your muscles are blocking the feeling from here, and you're using this feeling rather than this feeling. So when you use your hand feeling, you're blocking the feeling of the Kokyu. It's got to be completely relaxed. So in here, relax. Relax and show hips, not the shoulders. That feeling, I've mentioned in the previous video, you get a feeling of compression, and that happens a lot. Compression, drawing the tension with your abdominals. Your tummy comes out more. That's the feeling you get from the center. The hands accentuate that feeling. What happens is when you have that feeling, you get your footwork pushing back here, pushing back up. Your back foot is also solid, and everything from the ground goes up to this center, and that feeling gets very strong. What you wish to do is to go to one spot, one dot. So you get that alignment into one dot. If your footwork is not positioned correctly, the dot is bigger. So you haven't got a one dot feeling. When the alignment is into one spot. So when you cut into one spot, the right hand is doing the Kokyu. The power is on your left hand. The left hand does all the cut along. Your right hand stops the power, or control the power. So when you do the cut, the right hand stops it. Into one dot. The placement of your right foot is done at the same time with the cut. If you're cutting in this manner, foot first and cut, you're doing it too mechanically. You're thinking, I've got to place the foot first and then cut. When you're doing that, you're not using the center enough. So if you use the center, everything is into one dot. So I mentioned in the previous video, as a movement of your right foot is It's not moving back because you're moving it like this. It's because you're pulling your right hip, and then you bring your right hip forward again. That makes your right leg move forward. So it goes back and forward. You pull your right hip. This feeling very strong, and then you have this element of shimmy, which is the controlling of the Ken at the end of a cup, and it's that feeling of extension. The cut is not actually cut in here, just flat here. The cut is a projection forward more with a shimmy. This is the feeling growing. And when you do it this way, it's a lot more intense than doing it with the shoulders. You can see there's not enough of this, too much of that. You have to focus on trying to make the cut as clean and as accurate as possible. You've got to do the cut, your physical cut, but you've got to put your mind, spirit and body together as one. So, one. You get yourself ready. More intense. If you don't have your mind, body, spirit together, you're not quite ready, and you get this kind of training, which I'm showing you the wrong way. You're doing too many bad habits, adjusting your arm, adjusting the footwork, not quite ready. When you step on the mat and when you bow, you're ready already. Minimal footwork, minimal footwork. If you step back, ready? There's that element of mind, spirit being engaged, not being distracted. Engage into that feeling of readiness in that moment. You're ready now. Don't think I will be ready in a few moments. No, be ready now. So you feel it in the cut. When you have found the Kokyu, suddenly it changes your Aikido enormously, because even when you grip with a center, the shoulder. But the grip has that feeling of a cut. So then when you practice that no ankle, you offer your hand. This is the feeling, together, together, together. Kokyu feeling, strong, strong kokyu. As opposed to hands, 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 hands. You've got to forget the tension, leave the tension aside. He practices. He is strong, holding from here, and the strength is 10 times stronger than the physical strength. But what's interesting is when you're not using your tension, you're not sending a telegram. Again, I've explained that in my previous video. You're not sending a telegram. The power comes from under. Immediately, you overcome your partner without him realize or her. The power has been overcome already, and you're into a very strong position. Strong position. What I find interesting is when you're practicing with a Ken, there's a huge paradox. Don't fall into the trap. I'm doing just a Ken, cutting, cutting. You're basically working the connection with the taijutsu. How do I apply this movement in taijutsu? So the primary goal is not just a cut, but the feeling of the kokyu. That's the primary goal. Positioning of the hips, which is the same when you offer your hand. Or if you're going to do the second Ken Suburi, you've got this itoremi element. Itoremi element. Itoremi. Placement of the hips. Don't think just for the sake of the cut. The cut. And then you want to cut. There's more than that. Find the secret that is underlying behind the weapon. There's a body positioning. Body positioning. Body positioning. Hip positioning. Correct footwork will give you the feeling of strong kokyu. Once you've got it, it stays in you right there. So when you're practicing Aikido and you're learning, first you're digesting the technique. So you munching it in your mouth and it's still in your brain. And then it starts to sink in. You still do the thinking here. Once it's digested and it's there, you're no longer using this. You're using the feeling. Your body responds to the feeling. Aikido is not using the brain, but the feeling, body movement, posture, turning, and everything falls through. Naturally, you're gearing yourself to practice with multiple attackers. Turn ankle is a classic example of this. Why do we turn? Well, we turn because what we're worried about is not a partner that is facing us, but what we can't see behind us. So here, we deal with one against many already. He's gone because his balance is already affected. It may be a training exercise, but if there was showman, it's the same feeling. Pass, and I'm ready for the next one. And that's why I find Iwama Aikido quite advanced, because when you practice the weapons, it's got that same element of stepping off the line, ready for one against many, or even that element of cutting straight through. one against many. We don't deal one-on-one. It's always been done one against many. Stepping aside. That's just to avoid an attack. So these, so many techniques that fall into place. But in order to have a strong Kokyu, you must, in my view, you must practice the Ken. Especially the first Ken Suburi. The first Ken Suburi being the very first one to feel the compression of the hips, Kokyu. Once you've got that, relaxing of the shoulders, a power comes on, a different kind of power. So I hope my video has been informative, helping you, giving you some guidelines how to practice with the weapons. There's a huge paradox. When you practice with the weapons, think taijutsu. When you practice taijutsu, think weapons applications. And that's why they go hand in hand together. Very solid. Ken or Jo, they go together. They really teach us enormously. So I hope this video has been extremely helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, and also put a link at the end of this video regarding the London Aikido Club if you want to have a look at their website. Gives you some more information as well. Thank you.